Who is Anne Frank? Anne Frank was a German Jewish girl who hid with her family during World War II. She is famously known for keeping a diary and writing about her and her family's lifestyle. Anne Frank was born June 12, 1929, and sadly died on March 1945. Anne Frank and her family hid in Amsterdam, Netherlands, and found a house. Then they hid in the attic. She became the most discussed Jewish victim of the Holocaust. When the diary was found and published, The Diary of a Young Girl, this was published in 1947. My thesis is Anne Frank was a young Jewish girl from Germany who was forced to flee her home to escape Nazi persecution. She and her family were forced to relocate to the Netherlands, where she began to write in her diary. Against all odds, the writing of a teenage girl, The Diary of Anne Frank, will become the most important and powerful first-person account of living and hiding during the Holocaust, providing hope and inspiration of Jewish people and mankind everywhere. Anne Frank's lifetime was filled with some good times, like the part of an elementary school experience where she made friends and had good education. The hard times started in 1933 in Germany. The Frank family moved to Amsterdam and started a new life to escape Nazis in Germany, which would be a good decision considering she had her best times in Amsterdam. 6 years later, war broke out and Nazis invaded Poland. They stayed there for 2 years until they got caught on August 4th, 1944. From there, they were sent to a concentration camp in Auschwitz, Poland, which was the largest concentration camp. I went to my local library and got some books about Anne Frank. The books are Anne Frank: A Hidden Life, a picture book of Anne Frank, and the last book is Anne Frank Beyond the Diary. These books help me imagine what the situation was like. All of these sources help me find out what helpful information for this project. This evidence shows and explains what I'm trying to prove, which is how hard it was to live through the Holocaust. In a picture book of Anne Frank, it says Anne Frank was born during a very difficult time where millions of Jews were out of work. Hitler blamed Germans' problems on various groups of innocent people, but mostly Jews. This made it hard because all of the Frank family was Jewish, so that's why they did not have spacious rooms like the Frank family. These people either hid under floorboards or a house, or like the Frank family hid in the attic. This shows that it was really hard to hide from Hitler because people were crammed in tight spaces, but they had to because it was life or death. The Anne Frank diary was the major discovery, with it turning into 70 different languages and people learning about Anne Frank all over the world. Over 1.2 million people visit the Frank house in a year. Many schools and streets have been named after Anne Frank as well. It is also interesting to think about what would have happened if the Nazis found the diary before Otto Frank's friends did. I think they would have destroyed it because it would show how the evidence of how horrible they did to Jewish people. For evidence 2, I did research on Anne Frank on the Anne Frank website and watched an interview of Otto Frank from 1976 on BBC. This information from the website and the video helped me understand what Anne Frank and her family went through. When I watched the video, I learned the real date Anne died. It was March 1945. There was no specific date because nobody knew. I also learned that Otto Frank, Anne's dad, had copied the diary and sent it to his friends. One of his friends. My topic matters because if people did not have this type of evidence from Anne Frank's diary, we would not realize how awful the Holocaust actually was. This is significant in history because Anne Frank showed that the Holocaust was real, what German people did to them, and how Adolf Hitler abused his power to take away rights of Jewish people. Anne Frank was a young Jewish girl who from Germany who was forced to flee her home to escape Nazi persecution. She and her family were forced to relocate to the Netherlands, where she began to write down in her diary. Against all odds, the writing of a teenage girl, the diary of Anne Frank, will become the most important and powerful first-person account of living and hiding during the Holocaust, providing hope and inspiration to Jewish people and mankind everywhere. I proved my thesis by proving that the Diary of Anne Frank is an important and most powerful piece of evidence from a first-person point of view, and also I proved that it can become an inspiration to Jewish religion. And final, I proved that Anne Frank's diary might have been the biggest piece of evidence that showed horrible, tragic things that happened to Jews. Her diary was published into 70 different languages, 30 million copies have been sold, and kids still read about it in school today. An enormous amount of people know about the story of Anne Frank and what role her and her diary played in the Holocaust. The diary have changed many things. One question to ask is if Adolf Hitler didn't get stopped, what would happen to Otto Frank in the diary? Also, if nobody found the diary, would Anne Frank just sadly be known as a regular person that died in the Holocaust? Or would Otto Frank survive and share the story of how Anne Frank in her diary? There's so many unanswered questions about Anne Frank and the Holocaust. That's what makes it so good to have first-person accounts like the diary to read. It is also interesting to find more about her and the diary. Fun facts about Anne Frank. Anne was just a nickname. Her full name was Anneliese Marie Frank. Did you know that Anne Frank celebrated 2 of her 13 birthdays? Who's Kitty? Kitty is an imaginary friend that Anne Frank had and would usually write to in her diary. Did you know that her diary was published on 25th of June 1947? Now you know who Anne Frank really was and what role her and her diary played during the Holocaust.